I went ahead and named the show, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And, this is an interesting interview for me because this is rarely how it goes. But you started following me back in December on Instagram to see if I was legit or not. Was the exact words. To see if I was legit or not, because a friend was asking. A friend was asking, is this guy legit? By the way, we haven't talked before.
I know it feels weird that because we have, but we haven't.
We've done DMs, lots of DMs, and lots of I don't know
VMs?
if it's been lots. It's all been DMs, but I've been watching your stories. I imagine you've seen mine, so it's kind of weird. I am legit nervous, and I don't get nervous. It's hilarious. It was I got off my last meeting and I'm thinking, I got that. I thought about this morning, which is super rare. Like you're up there with Arnold Schwarzenegger for nervousness.
That's great. But I mean, hopefully you're pleased to hear that you turned out to be legit.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
good.
No, but I've developed a bit of an Instagram crush. I'm watching you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman is speaking my language all the time. So
I get
really
it.
good stuff. Yeah, you get it. Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, you were talking about something that, like a lot of the stuff you've been putting out. We're in like quarantine. We're self-isolating, all that kind of stuff. And I haven't even talked about what you do or mentioned it, but actually, could you share? I want to hear from your perspective instead of me, just creating some story out of thin air from what I've perceived.
All right.
Because what I've done, I've taken the snapshots of your life and I've created this character in which I'm like, oh yeah, I know all about her.
Yeah, okay, I can for sure. Which parts do you want to know about? Instead of assuming that you want to know my qualifications, because I can do that, but yeah, I feel like that's
in our part of the world, like in the Western world, qualifications don't mean shit anymore. So, why do people come to you? Why do people come to your workshops and seek out your help?
I can only reflect what they've said, right? And I think okay, so here's if I'm to distill it down on the spot. Thank you, Mike. What they say is they feel completely seen, like completely naked, and not like real life nudity, completely naked and not judged at the same time, which they often people will say they don't feel ever in life, period.
Yeah.
So if I'm to kind of like break it all down, it's that's the repetitive sense that comes back all the time of after someone's experience or they've just landed, they're like, I don't know why I'm here. Yeah.
Nice. Now, if I do look at your credentials, I see CBT on there. Do I see NLP?
Yeah.
So you do a lot of things around language, cognition, but also somatic as well. You blend the two. You seem like the type of person that has achieved a level of mastery and therapy, and you've taken all these different things, and it's like it doesn't really matter. I'm not following a single thing. I blended it together into this coaching expression. Is that accurate?
I guess so, yeah. My background at the very beginning, actually, I was a personal trainer, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to manage gyms when I was at university, when I was studying medical science. So I ran gyms, and I was a personal trainer and an instructor, and like I really miss teaching spin classes and aerobics and all that jazz. And then went medicine, and then dove into psychosomatics because I was in cancer therapy.
Okay.
And wanted to understand that connection, and then went into regression therapy, timeline. I did NLP back in the day when it took like 2 years to study. You know, it was like these big in-depth courses that you really had to learn the ins and outs of human beings, and then progressed into like CBT and somatic healing and energy work and meditation and mindfulness. And it's just, obviously I just got deeper and deeper into probably the core of who we are as human beings, rather than like going from, it's almost like my studies went like this. And yeah, and I just work with it intuitively for whatever, for whoever and whatever is in front of me.
Nice. Okay, so what are you, so people, I imagine people come to you because they want to experience some type of freedom, you know.
Yeah.
There's, it's, people don't feel self-expressed, they don't feel seen, they're stuck, they're held back in some way, holding themselves back, self-sabotaging, all these things.
Yeah.
So when someone comes to you, how is your first interaction with somebody? When they go, I need help, I feel stuck, Amber, what do I do?
I'll ask them what sense of idea of themselves feels stuck. You know, it's probably, I really spend a lot of time understanding the people that I work with before I work with them. And I'm sure you get that. And I guess I don't really want to bore you with like the qualification of that, in a sense. However, really, Mike, we're all the same. Like no one has a new problem that I haven't seen, whether they've come to me because they've suppressed their trauma of sexual abuse from 3 years old that they can't remember, but they know is there, or they're going to the next like $1 million part of their business but they just keep on that edge and they're just afraid to destroy it, or whatever it is. It's like, I always bring people back to this simplicity of what's happening inside of them, to be able to really, whoever it is, my work is to guide them in whatever way they need, be able to guide them right back to themselves, to understand how they have created it, which is the same thing for everyone. It's like not just this person,
Right.
really understand how they've created their own resistance, their block, their disassociation from their being or their pain or their shadow, and work with that through integration, work with that through presence, work with that through somatics, work with that through their own understandings. It's like, if I have a repeat client, I failed my job. My desire is always to go, you can do this. This is how. And it may take years of mentorship or work or coaching to get them to that place of trust and beingness and groundedness in that. And I don't care, as long as they fucking get there, so that they remember and that they understand how full and whole they are, and that they always had this. So it's just like a skill building. It's a cultivation. It's a reintroduction to someone remembering who they are in their own power. And that's done through different methods and means, whether that's one-on-one, which I don't do a lot of anymore because of my other businesses. I don't have enough space and time that I want to dedicate to that. But in retreat is my favorite, because it's like this container of just, they just see themselves and they just feel life again, and they go back in and they meet themselves, and they have to work through that, and they do it again and again and again. Same in the day workshops. So I miss the input. I miss touching people, right? So that's my work. It's my love of that, of helping people really integrate those dark and light aspects and come back to their pure sense of being, and bring in the cognition of mind. I love helping people expand in business. So it's like, we don't go here until we've gone here, because this will fuck you up. Whereas this will ground you and it's pure, and you can create with so much more leverage effortlessly. And then you can use this when you need to.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, and if you're not in touch with what's happening in the body or the heart, then you can't be in alignment. So you may just be working, the likelihood that you're working on the wrong thing is really high. You know, I experienced it myself. I see it a lot with entrepreneurs who are, they may come to me and go, oh, I want to use microdose psychedelics for performance. And I go, I don't suggest a microdose until you've done a macrodose, because it's for a few different reasons. But one of those is, if you're not in touch with like the deeper purpose of what you're doing, who cares if you're more productive, right?
Yes.
And the mind is overused, right? Like it's overburdened We put a lot of importance on that, and yeah, it's there for a purpose, but not what we typically use it for, I don't think.
Yeah, and that's the paradigm that's breaking at the moment, really. Like, we're so used to it. It helps us feel in control.
Yeah.
But it's also led us to self-destruction and destroying our earth and destroying each other. And
yeah. Can you man, there's so many things I want to ask you, but you did just mention control. Can you talk about that as a concept? And there are so many people that I am we do some similar work. So you wouldn't know it from Instagram though. It's so the shit, what was I saying? Oh yeah, there's a certain segment of the population, they're like, I want to go do your retreat, but I don't want to lose control.
yeah.
And that's, yeah, it's like, oh, you're funny. So can you talk about how do you talk to that?
So, okay, I'll answer the retreat. I'll give a bit of context so I can go into it.
Sure.
Generally, when people come to my retreat, they have no idea what's happening. So I have like they give me immense amount of trust, which is my honor and pleasure. I literally don't tell them what's happening except like moment to moment. Right. And they half flip the fuck out about that and then half love it because they've been so strong and had to have so much control forever that they're at that point where they're like, oh gosh, please, can someone lead? Can someone please, I want it, because truly, Mike, we all want to be able to surrender into our heart and go from there. We all do, because we can't lead our lives when we're trying to control our lives. That it's opposing, right? We all have this these two different aspects to ourselves. Can I speak to the masculine, feminine energy? Is that language okay, or is that do you want me to go somewhere else?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
That's great.
So we have a masculine and feminine essence within us all. That's not male or female, both male, female, binary, whatever, however you identify. We all have a masculine energy and a feminine energy. If you can imagine the masculine being the container and the feminine, whatever is within the container. Masculine container, it holds, it always wants to be empty. That part of us, that energy wants to be empty, it wants to be free, it wants to be like nothing. And then the feminine energy is whatever is within that container. It wants to be full, it wants to create, it wants to feel, it wants to flow. It's just that beauty. So we have been in a world where firstly, we've only focused or led, or not even led from, lived from the shadow side of the container. It wants to contract everything and hold it within its control. So it doesn't become a container where anything can flow. It suddenly becomes this container where it has to feel empty all the time and I can't touch anything, especially if it's uncomfortable or especially if it's moving and I can't explore it and I don't know what it's going to do next. I don't want it. So we have rejected our feminine essence, because the feminine essence will dance, it'll do whatever, and it's spontaneous and it's wild, and this is all within us. And it's what nourishes us, and it's what's, creates the most beautiful creativity. So we really are craving that. We're craving that. But what happens when we've lived through that shadow aspect of the masculine, it's instead of being able to lead our own lives, from a heart centered place, we try to control it, right? Because it's still trying to get to the same goal of emptiness and feeling free, but it's trying to do that through toxic means because it hasn't integrated into being able to relax into the other side of ourself, which is the feminine heart. So to answer the question, how do I answer the question when someone's like, I don't want to let go of control? I'm like, well, you and I both know that that's why you're here. And my role is to make them feel so deeply held in whatever the mess or whatever the fears are that arise in letting go of that control. So it truly can take that up, it requires that other person to say, okay, I will let go and I will feel safe. And that's why we'll probably be drawn to certain mentors and leaders, because we feel safe and held to be able to release that, right? That's why we will feel unsafe in relationships if our partner is trying to control us instead of leading, whatever that is in the relationship. Does that answer the question? I mean, I could go forever, but hopefully that.
Well, can you give an example of controlling versus leading in a relationship?
Oh, yes, I can.
Every woman.
And, yeah, okay. So, and I'm guilty of it as well,
I was about to say,
100%.
I've done it.
Like
Like some of the women I've dated,
100%.
I'm like, I am so sorry.
Yeah. And some of the men I've dated, I'm so sorry. So, okay. I might just give a personal example. It might be the easiest because I think then people can live through that. So the last relationship I was in it was beautiful, it was intense, and it was short-lived as well. And it was so fantastic. And whenever we would hang out and do adventurous things together that would bring us to the present moment, adventure. So say like hiking or surfing or mushrooms or like walks through, he was in his heart, right? Because he was in flow, he was there. And so he would effortlessly be led, and he would effortlessly lead, and I would effortlessly be led. It was beautiful. It was like, especially in the surf, it was so easy to take direction and to be led, because consciously or unconsciously, my energy, my feminine, my heart knew that I was being led from a place of heart. Outside adventure, outside surf, outside of that, when all our old patterns kick in, because they do, I would notice, okay, there's one example that there was a car coming one day and we were holding hands, and instinctively I pulled him back from the car, and he kind of looked at me and he's like, I lead. And I was like, well, that's not leading, that's controlling. And we would have this like battle, or he would say, it's a micro example, but I pick up
Yeah.
on the micro. Do you know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of a different way of control.
Well,
Oh,
I think it's good to mention the things that are subtle as well as the things that
okay.
are extremely obvious.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that, like, I feel like, so my ex-wife brought something up to me the other day where she was like, you want some feedback that might help you in your future relationships? And I go, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, well, when you're ready, I'm like, I'm ready right now. And then, yeah, I'm like, and then she told me, I'm like, yeah, I get that. But then, like, she was able to point out, like, 2 hours later, she goes, see, you did it right there. You did it right there. And I go, like, there's a little sound I make, and the way I like pulled back, and I go, yeah, that was coming from that place of being like triggered and actually feeling like somebody's trying to control me.
Yes.
And I'm like, and then I turn into a dick. So yeah. But that was, it's even the subtle things. I think it's more important to even know about those, because we miss them so easily. So easily.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Can we get a big one? Oh, go
Good
ahead.
for you. Good for you, for a receipt. Like, thank you. Like, and my whole feminine heart is like, yeah, okay, a big one. I'm trying to just be mindful of the respectful as well. So a big one, honestly, it's here's what's probably easier. The reaction, because he was working with the same thing. It was like his projection of being controlled by the feminine he was so terrified of that if he wasn't relaxed into his feminine, which he was struggling to do, like we all do at times, if I was in any way, shape, or form feeling like I was out of control, which is the feminine in its most spontaneous, right? So it's loud or this or that. It would almost like he'd almost just want to quiet me down. Just like, shh. And I'm like, did you just shush me? Like, did you just tell me to be a bit more quiet? Like,
Yeah.
what? Or I would know, Yeah. Or I noticed once when I made like a really big business win, there was like a subtlety of like resentment or like a backlash. There was a compliment, but it was a passive aggressiveness. And I'm like, oh, and so these subtleties of control aren't necessarily like you have to do this. It would be a passive aggressive jab at something, like quieten down a little, or a feeling of intimidation, or almost like a, yeah, but you really, like a bringing down of, which is to try and dial down a little.
Yeah. And I
So
imagine
that,
he
does
didn't
that
do
make
that on
sense?
purpose. Yeah, he didn't do that on purpose. I
Absolutely not.
seriously doubt it. Um, you wouldn't, I don't think you'd pick out somebody who would do stuff like that on purpose. These are unconscious patterns.
100%.
And we don't even know where, like, we did it 5 minutes ago. And if you were to point it out, might be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Completely.
And that's the beauty of then having those open conversations. And which we did. It was like, hey, this is what this feels like. This is what that feels like. And there's the part that's like, I didn't fuck you right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the pattern breaks have to
Yeah.
continue to happen again. So
Yeah. Well, what's really cool about those conversations is, I mean, it sucks in that it's like, oh, I've been behaving that way. One of the things we like to say is it's not who you are, it's what you learned. And so, and if you can learn it, you can unlearn it. And so it's more of like, yeah, I just learn to be that way. It's not actually who I am. So like it adds some levity to it. It's like, oh, okay. All right. I've been doing some shit that pisses people off. Okay. So I could do this differently. And then it becomes exciting because now I go, wow, I'm before she told me this, I would definitely gonna bring it into my next relationship, and now I go, now I have a celebration. It's like, okay, now we get to celebrate because now there's something that I get to do different, which is going to create a different future that's going to be something that I like even better. But it doesn't mean that just because the awareness is there doesn't mean it's fixed. So now the real work begins, right? It's like,
yeah. I love what you said there around, okay, so this has been pointed out and great, now I could do better. And I want to, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So I think what's really important is to dance that line of, I do it all of the time, super guilty of it. And I can only see it now. I'm like, oh yeah, like I've been teaching on that a lot lately, which is that there's this excitement because great, now I can grow and evolve. And the balance of that, it's almost like we need to honor that and utilize that inspiration to shift, because that inspiration is obviously leading us to somewhere we want to go, and being careful of the ego to then not take another shinier step to being a more enlightened version of ourselves, which it's that's our unconscious pattern that we're now picking up on as a collective right now. So I do it all the time.
Which is
with,
wanting
it's
to
like
be
yeah. It's like it's the ego takes on a shinier spiritual materialism. It's like, oh, I'm inspired to do better or be better, which means that there is like a presupposition that right now we are not enough. And so you have chosen acceptance over like shaming yourself. Oh, I was, I did this thing and that was wrong. And then, okay, actually it's something I learned. Now I'm inspired to do better. Great. And that's a beautiful choice to go and a beautiful pathway to move down. And then we must be mindful to catch that little ego to be like, oh, because then I can be better and I can be more enlightened. Is it cool?
Yeah.
Do all of that and then let go of who you need to be.
Yeah. 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 So not me needing to be better, but let's see, I'll work this out in real time for myself. This is for me.
I love it. This is great.
So for me, it's not about, it's not about being better. It's just about healing. It's just about healing. And the excitement isn't about being better. The excitement is about being cleaner, like having
100%. Yeah.
Creating less bullshit in the world and having more peace. It's really what it comes down to for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that gets exciting.
Beautiful. Yeah. And when you were speaking, what I just kept feeling was like, yeah, it's just to be more true. It's like more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
That feels good.
Mm-hmm.
That feels right. Like it feels like, okay, this is home. Like this, do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's where I'm going in, and truth and home. And then as a result, peace comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Smooth.
I like it.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long you been social distancing? Left turn.
I believe my last event where I touched and held people actually was beginning of March. And then once it around like the 9th, 10th of March or something like that, it was International Women's Day. I was a speaker at an event and we all embraced each other. And then after that, I think it was like literally 24 hours after I was speaking to, because I was a radiation therapist and my aunt's still one, and I was speaking to people in the hospitals and we were talking about it, and I went, everyone needs to social distance now. And it just clicked. And then I went into self-isolation like 2 weeks before Australia brought in any concept about it. So
Yeah.
since then, a month. What's the date? Yeah, about a month.
Yeah.
Bit under. You?
About the same.
We were chatting, remember? Because I was like,
that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I was actually bummed. I was like, I can't believe she's not going to fly to LA because of this. And it was.
Yeah, because that's what I was like, because you're like this, and I was like, and that's what I'm like, and I'm backpedaling. I'm meant to be in Denver right now.
Yeah.
And I was meant to go to Italy. Obviously, that didn't happen. I was meant to then go to Morocco and then go to Denver, and we we're going to catch up in LA. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Because we did start DMing, and then it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna cross paths at some point. So I was like, I'm gonna keep up, and we'll cross paths. And I was like, oh, we'll be in SoCal at the same time. I'll make that. I was like,
yes,
perfect. And then 24 hours later, it was like not gonna happen. And then
I was like,
I was gonna go to Colombia.
No bueno.
Yeah, I was going. I was back. I was only in the U.S. for I don't know, like 10 days. I was gonna be back out to Costa Rica, then Colombia.
Yep.
And the day I was going to get on the plane, within hours, I got the message saying Colombia's closed its borders.
Remember I messaged you and I was like, yo, bro, careful. You're going to get stuck. And you're like, whatever. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. So now I'm stuck. I'm stuck in Utah. I don't know if you know where that is, but
I do.
It's in the desert.
How's that going?
It's going great. I am loving it out here. Quarantine is the best time ever. I had no idea. I had been traveling the world for the last, 2.5 years, just having the time of my life. And then this hits me and says, you're going to stay put. And I remember the child inside of me, little Mike, he was throwing a tantrum. He's like, these people are trying to tell me what to do. I do not like it. I'm going to get my guns. And I'm going in the wilderness where nobody can tell me what to do.
I adore you right now. It's fantastic. Thank you for being so honest, because I'm absolutely sure most every single man in America went through that.
Totally.
Talking to my friend, he's like, I just went to my shed and I got my 3 guns. And I was like, what is up with you guys? Yeah. I was like, the men over here just going to get some more VB. Like, VB is it's a terrible beer. Yeah, and everyone in America were watching this, like, you're all lining up to get your guns. I'm like, oh no, I'm just worried about not being able to go to the beach.
Yeah, man. I don't know. For me, all right, so I was in the military, and I don't know if that's a good excuse or not, but I'll say this is I had never seen, this is how I processed it, is I had never seen a threat like this before. I've never seen this threat before. I've never seen the government react like this before. This is very much out of alignment with everything that's happened at this point. And legally, it's sketch. It's sketch. And Americans are not like Americans and Australians are probably culturally very close, but I've never been to Australia. But out of like all the different countries in the world, um, and but I was like, man, we don't really like follow the rules very well, you know. Like not a lot
Yeah.
of rule followers around here. So, so I'm just like, I don't trust, truthfully, I don't trust the average person to deal with stress in a really positive way. And
Yeah.
was living, at the time I'm in San Diego, and out of the cities in the U.S., San Diego is gonna do it the best because it's a laid back culture. But I was like, I just don't want to be in the city. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out. And but what it was I started looking at I started running the math. I go, okay, what's the best place for me to be if shit gets really bad? Food supply goes down, all this stuff goes down. I'm like, yeah, I'll go out to where I have access to an unlimited amount of food, and spring water, and not very many people. And so, and
Beautiful.
it's turned into just a really awesome vacation. And the I think you'll appreciate this too, is when I left, I called my inner circle. I said, these are the people. I made a list. I go, these are my people. I'm like, I'm gonna make the offer. I had 2 people take me up on it out of maybe a dozen. Actually, I don't think it was a dozen. Maybe I shouldn't tell people this, because now people are gonna go like, I'm not in the inner circle. I didn't get the
I'm
phone
not the
call.
inner circle.
This is live streaming my Facebook page. So there's many. It's not that I don't care about you. It's just that I know you're fine. You're good. So, but one of the people is my ex-wife. I was like, because she lives by herself in San Diego. I go, oh, you know what? You come on. She goes, okay. And so we've been hanging out for the last month together, and it's actually been it's been fine. It's been good. So
That's such a beautiful thing.
yeah, this has actually been a really cool gift on multiple levels. In business, it's been a gift, and I've been doing some fasting out here and getting a lot of reflection, which has been a gift, which I wasn't doing before. Wasn't taking a lot of. I was taking more reflection than most people, but I got to do more. And then, the time with my ex-wife and just getting complete on some things is one of those things where we separated, spent a year apart, and it's like we probably wouldn't hang out together very much voluntarily if there wasn't some type of circumstance like this. It's like, okay, cool. This is actually
the world pandemic.
Yeah, it's like, the apocalypse is here. Let's hang out. So it's been a gift on that level too, because I think this solidifies our friendship post marriage, where I think it was a little touch and go on being able to be friends afterwards.
That's
This has been good.
awesome. So good. Yeah. I moved house the week Australia still wasn't, there was still no rules or regulations, and would have been 2.5, almost 3 weeks ago now. And I'm just so grateful because I literally live across from the beach, and I have a pool in my backyard and palm trees. I live in a place called Palm Beach.
Nice.
And my roomie, he's a legend. He's a chiropractor. We've been friends for like 6 years. And I'm a bit of a
got
nana.
Cairo as a roommate? That's great.
Yes. Look, I get adjusted like just in my lounge room here. I know, it's great. Like, he's got his office, but we have a Cairo bed at home, which is great. I know, it's fantastic. And then actually, you can probably see in the background, this is like our lounge room area, and there's like sound bowls and candles and my life. I was a little bit worried because I was like, my awesome legend of a mate who, I've partied wild with years ago. I remember when we moved in, I was like, okay, Peppy, no crazy parties. Right? No, like real crazy. I was like, you can do whatever you want with your life. But I was like, if I come home at 3 a.m. and that I'm pooping that party. Anyway, and he's like, yeah, cool. And then we moved in, and legitimately, like, we have just synced in the most beautiful way, and our friendship's become so strong. It's like, I'm cooking meals. I don't really do that. And each evening we like have tea together and we meditate, and it's just been this beautiful flourishing of friendship. So I think people, like, just like you're noticing, like, we've got this capacity and this beautiful depth of intimacy, that doesn't require like physical intimacy or a love or anything like that. It's able to unfold, and I'm really grateful for that
That's cool.
too in my world. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you had a, was it yesterday? You had a down day?
Day before. I'm ahead of you
Oh, that's right.
in
Yeah.
Australia. Yeah.
Was it Tuesday
Uh-huh.
your time?
Yeah, it was Tuesday, my Tuesday.
I had a down day on Tuesday myself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were posting that. I go, it was, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then yesterday I like slept in, cut out early, screwed around, gave myself some
Yeah.
space. And then before we got on the call, I was like, I'm going to ask her about that. And I go, I kind of had one of those myself.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's the full moon, right? So
I think we can't even yes and no, and oh my gosh, like, what do you want to know about it?
how did you manage that? A lot of people are at home right now and they're like, oh my God, I'm having these feelings. I had a, there they are. I can't get away. I had a client. I've been doing these calls. I call them the mothership. I do these calls with anyone who's been a client in the past, since we went into quarantine. And so if anyone's been a client in the past, jump on. Let's hash some stuff out as a group. And today I had a guy who I don't know how I didn't know this before. Like he didn't share. I don't know how it didn't get shared. But he smokes weed every day for the last, like, wake and bake for 4 years. And I don't know, that's a term over there. Wake and
We have the
baking.
movies. Got it.
You say a lot of words on your Instagram that I have to look up or really
Urban Dictionary.
figure it out. I'm like, what is she talking about? I think I know. I think I know what that is. I'm good with context.
Okay.
Now, but he was like he wasn't taking action on something, and we get talking, and then come to find out, because we were talking about the week before I was on there, I was talking about feelings and how it's good to, learn to be with that. He goes, oh yeah, well, I've been avoiding them for 4 years. I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Is a business client, not anyway, there's levels.
Yeah, got it.
So I was like, today I was like, yeah, man, just let's cut that shit back and see what emerges. So I imagine that, I think alcohol sales are up and all this stuff, but I imagine that people are smoking, drinking, playing video games. There's all these things that people are doing to avoid having a feeling that they're scared to have. Sounds like you were having feelings, and how did you process that? How are you with that?
Totally. I kind of wrote a little bit about it yesterday. Thanks for asking. And most of my whole career's work has been practicing to be able to remain with what's uncomfortable, remaining back into your essence and your presence, or just even your breath, like what we spoke about before, the container and then what's within it. We want the container without anything in it, and then we want the container to create what it is only that we want, that's pleasurable. That's the old wounded masculine paradigm. So now what we've got is the container that doesn't like anything uncomfortable, and all of the things that are swirling around we now have to sit with. So that's what's happening now. It's always been there forever. We've just been able to numb and depress it down. So a lot of people are feeling depressed because of that, or they're projecting because they're exploding outwards. So what tends to happen when we sit is things arise, or when we're more still, and we're not necessarily still. I heard the other day that a guy ran a marathon in his house, like just kept going up and down the stairs, and I was like, oh, wow, escapism is its best. My chiropractor housemate's like, I was so worried about him turning on his right hip so many times.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so
man.
that's what you're talking about, which everyone is experiencing. And my experience was, I've practiced it for forever. I've taught it forever. I've processed people so many different times, and I still will be like, this sucks. This feels gross. However, I really intimately know that part of myself. And it was that 14-year-old or 13-year-old that used to listen to like Marilyn Manson and put it on full ball when my grandma was having Bible study.
Yeah.
just to be like, fuck the world. And I felt her. I woke up and I'm like, oh, I had to have like, I had to be director for the day because I've got different businesses and a charity, and I had to be director rather than creator that day. So I was in that quite a masculine mode,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to tear shreds of people. I had no compassion. Like I practiced it, but I had to dig deep. Like, oh man, I had to dig deep for empathy on Tuesday because I just wanted to be like, why is everyone an idiot? And that's how I felt. Why are people dumb? And my assistant, who is like, she's linear and she's great. She just gets my world organized. And usually I'm like, hey, take a breath. Like, add a bit of kindness to that email. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm usually the one like encouraging this. And she's like, and you can't send that email to the lawyer. And I was like, why? And she's like, I think it's a bit harsh. And I'm like, fine, you write it. I was just a brat, and I'm saying this and then I'm bursting out laughing. And I said, I'm like, sorry, H. And I was like, I just need, and she's like, whoa, she's never seen me like this.
Yeah.
So how I dealt with it was I laughed. I had awareness of it. I didn't speak to anyone that I didn't necessarily have to speak to, so they didn't have to endure that part of me. I didn't have anything booked that day. So I had meetings booked, but they were like, I could just be direct in them. So it was fine. And then when it got to the point where I felt, so when I have any sadness that wants to arise from a cellular level or not, and what I'm talking about here, Mike, is the difference between we can create pain, create suffering by resisting our pain in our mind or having story. What I was experiencing was something that was coming up from within because I'd been being still. There's a difference, subtle, and we can go into it with me. So that was coming up and I knew it. And I'm like, all right, anxiety in the chest, you know what that means. That means you got to cry. That means the sadness. I know that feeling somatically in my body. I know myself well. So I didn't feel like crying though, Mike. I didn't want to cry. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I got out my guitar and I strummed and I played like love ballads and I got a couple of tears out and I screamed and I danced to rock and roll. And then it was 4 o'clock and I was like, it's wine time. And I don't encourage drinking, but I'm not a drinker generally, right? It's not, I don't do it. I'm not pulled to it. I don't really enjoy it. I don't like the feeling of being drunk, but there was this part of me, I was like, I want a glass of my best organic red, give it to me, So I went and poured myself a glass of wine and then I was just writing. And I just knew to not like reject that part of myself because I could hear my mind wanting to judge it and wanting to get rid of it and wanting to all of these things. So what I practiced the best I could was an expression of what felt like I needed to do at the time. I was like, I need to go play my guitar. I need to go and play it poorly and I need to sing. And I need to like punch my fists on the floor when I'm on the ground and I am angry about, I didn't even know what I was upset about. I didn't even know what I was sad about. I could have gone into my head and said, well, obviously I'm sad because of this, because my childhood is that, but I don't even go there. And I encourage people not to do it. I'm like, look, you don't even, that is just another form of control. How about you just stay with the feeling and you fully embrace it? And then I stayed and I laid until it really came up and I just let it kind of take over me, not in a sense where I became the victim and identified with it, and not so I was disassociated to it from what I was like, this is me playing the guitar, from doing it. I just let it be felt and seen fully. And there's I was mindful to throw the alcohol and the glass of wine in there. It's like, that is out of character for me. And that is both a sign that I am at my emotional capacity and I'm at this. And it's also a sign of me just allowing myself to let go. And that's it's different for me in a sense. So, and then I did that and then I laughed with my housemate and I woke up the next morning. That was good.
Yeah.
It's like,
You let it
I just
process.
let it be. Yeah.
And then you go to sleep. The brain, whatever, defrags. It gets the rest it was wanting to get.
Yeah.
And then it's so crazy how different someone can feel from day to day. And one thing you use the word depressed somewhere in there, and I always think about like people a lot of times experience depression, or they perceive depression as sadness, and I always tell people it's not. It's like you're depressing is depressing everything. And over time, it's just, you're just not feeling anything. So for one of the things that's happening for me in the social isolation and being still a lot more is every day seems so exciting because I
Mm.
feel different every day. I feel different from moment to moment. And other people who are getting bored, I'm going, I can't imagine being bored with all of these feelings. This is an incredible experience. Like I don't know what's gonna happen next.
Welcome to our life.
Yeah. And so when people say bored, I go, I bet the person who's bored is also depressed. Is also
Yeah,
not.
or numb.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not present to the experience that's
Yeah, they're not
right
present.
right there for them at all times. Can you explain you started talking about, let's see if I can go back. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Something that's like arising, like you had that feeling arising versus maybe in it, and please help me be more accurate in what I'm understanding you say. Are you saying that something's either arising out of you, that something was arising out of you, or what happens most of the time for most people is getting triggered from the outside, which creates
Yeah.
a story that then generates feelings? Can you
Yes.
talk about that?
Sure. So I think what a lot of people, when they're first starting to um, self-reflect or have some sense of awareness of like mind and emotions, um, they're not fully sovereign, they're not fully self-empowered. We're always working towards self-sovereignty, which is that you are in control and in charge of your experience of life, period. You're not governed by what's in your mind, what your emotions are doing, or the outside world. That's full sovereignty. Almost People are almost always in reaction. They're living through their amygdala part of their brain, which I call Amy. Like she is a 2-year-old that you cannot reason with, and she likes to
I
criticize,
love
judge,
that
prove, defend,
name. I love that
because it's
name.
the
It makes so
amygdala.
much, yeah.
Yeah, Amy, 2-year-old that you cannot rationalize with. She's always right. She's always the victim. So most people are just automatically in that mode because they're in fight or flight, because we're overstimulated, because they're not present. So as a result of that, there's so much drama and emotion swirling within because of that reaction mentally going on, that busyness.
Mhm.
Now, when you start to become aware of that and perhaps like become present, notice what you're feeling, these things that have been depressed, often what I find is the depression, when because there's a numbness, and then I think there's this sense of feeling very dark emotionally, and I believe that that's actually paying attention to what's coming up, and almost like a hold, like a stronghold of wanting, trying to push away what has been suppressed, but also an intense focus on it at the same time. And so it's a deep loneliness, and then it feels helpless, and that's
Mm.
when you go into suicide and that. So the numbness and the suppression of emotion create a depression because it's focused on it, and that Amy gets attached to it. So that's a different, that's like a self-created thing that can, and I want to be very mindful of that, because I don't want to say you created your own depression, you are wrong. We have done what we have done in order to protect ourselves the best way, period. You have done fantastic. There's just a different way if you want to, and that can take time. So once, say you've done some work and you've started to shift through that, and you're realizing, whoa, this is the way that I'm looking at this that's creating my pain right now. And I have this thing that I teach in the schools called the magical thinking circle, because my other business we teach in schools, and in organization we call it the empowerment circle, which is how I see the world, changes how I feel, changes how I act, changes my result, which confirms how I see the world. So we change how I see the world. So once you've kind of got that set, you're no longer in reaction, and that's not what's happening in here. Good. Then imagine you've got joy coming out of you. Then naturally, just through life, or through a full moon, or through a pandemic, or through whatever, something will happen and something will be poked that's been protected, and it's already in here. And you go, and it starts to come up. Perhaps it's been there on a nervous system wiring, or a cellular level, or like it's trapped energy that you've been present enough to, or something has poked enough to arise up. And then it's kind of coming out. And I'm giving this visual, and this isn't perfect, and it's my interpretation. So
Mm.
take it or leave it. But it comes up. And then that is when if we can, and we work with that the exact same we would work with the pain that we've created, right? So whether or not we've created it, whether we still do the same thing, which is an observation, a compassionate curiosity, a loving kindness and presence with it. And this, the one that we've created through the way we're seeing something, can usually dissolve very quickly because we can shift it and it's gone. But if it's something that's coming up, say a grief or a sadness that needs to be felt, or a loneliness that you're like, whoa, I feel lonely, or a fear, or a scare, whatever, if it's something quite deep that's coming up that needs to be seen, it's probably not going to be. And I do not recommend trying to shift by changing the way you see something, because you're just bypassing. So that's when it's time to somatically be with and compassionately feel and allow it to arise up and come through. And that's when we use like movement of the body or singing or breath or meditation or expression.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
And I'm pretty good at knowing what's going to make sense to the listeners.
Okay.
Yeah, and this actually ties into something you were saying earlier, which I think it was around, I tried to remember words specifically. We'll see how accurate I am. The story. It's like, I don't know if we could go in there and try to change the story, or we could, same as change the perspective or create a workaround. I call them workarounds in the mind. Is like, I used to be brilliant.
Like a reframe or something.
Yeah, like I used to be so good at, and then I realized that I had built this really crazy maze in my mind that was just hard to get through because I had to. It's like, oh, I can't go there. I got to go here before I go there. I have to go around these 3 things before I can get over there. But I got a lot of horsepower. I'm okay. But I didn't know that like it's one of those things like, yeah, I'll just take more nootropics and I can just plow through this. And then someone says, you could just like demo that whole maze. I'm like, oh, cool. It requires me to feel. Got it. Okay. Feeling. That's new. So it's been quite the adventure. And it did start with story work of like, oh, I need to identify the story. What feeling am I associating with this story? I've got this. So I have this feeling. What's the story? And so I started practicing. I figured this out. I was surfing one day. I'm sitting on my board and I'm out there and I go, oh, just I started the practice of assuming. I like to try on beliefs, right? Okay. I'm gonna believe this for 2 weeks. I put it down. All right, for 2 weeks, I'm gonna believe this, and if my life gets better, I'm gonna take it on as if it's the truth. So I started believing that feelings created thoughts, whereas the common like mainstream perception
that thoughts create feelings
is the other way around. So I was like, I'm just gonna do that. So I started doing that, and all of a sudden my mind got really calm. I was like, oh, interesting. I just always put my imagination, I just put my attention right there on the feeling, and then it dissipates. But I didn't really fix anything. Like I was able to calm things down in the moment, but I didn't really know how to let that energy flow. And so that was like a really cool step out of the mind and into the body, but not necessarily learning how to process the whole situation.
Yeah.
So I'll fast forward I did a bunch of story work, and then I realized that it's not even, sometimes it's helpful. Story work is helpful, but in regard to processing something, is like, I just got to the point where I was like, I don't even want to hear the story.
Yes. Good.
You just got to be with whatever it is. Is that what you were getting at? I was going to ask you a question.
100%.
I'm going to talk.
Yeah, 100%. And what if I give some context, but I want to flag that I'm only using this explanation so our mind can do something with it, so that then we can destroy the idea altogether.
Perfect.
So it's almost like at first we realize, oh, that story, I can change my story and I can change my feeling. This is also a form of control. And it's also not wrong. right?
Right.
If I change the way that I see this, then I can change how I feel, which changes. Cool. That's a cool thing. And as long as it's not bypassing the initial thing that needs to be healed, and as long as it's coming from a genuine place of like alignment, those are two really important things to know. So it's like, yes, with story. Actually, I'm going to go straight to, I agree. I teach it through all of our programs that we do with Karma & Co, that the mind, it has involuntary thoughts, right? They just happen from conditioning, just happens. And then B, it will get busier when there's something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
In an attempt to try and control this.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I say to my clients, they're like, and I'm like, okay, let's stop. Let's go in, let's feel, we dissolve and dissolve and dissolve and dissolve. And then I'll say, now tell me the problem. The problem either changes or it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once we're down to the root of it, perhaps we might need to go further into some regression or further into something much deeper. And then we find the mother story, right? Or the mother perception that has been leading the whole thing forever. And then that's the story we want to shift, but not shifting cognitively, shifting because we've shifted the energy, and then suddenly the perception changes and you're like, oh, now I see it. And now it becomes this, it's not this or it's that, it just was.
Yeah. How cool
and that's
is
very
that
deep and complex, but yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That's one of the best explanations I've heard. Yeah, that of how that happened. I've witnessed people go through that. Oh, when I was 4, my mom did this, said this, or was just being this way, and holy shit, I've shaped my whole life around that. But beyond cognitive, like the whole body just changes, transforms right in front of you.
It's this, and you've got to be mindful again. And I want to say this because I hear it so much, and it gets under my skin, not because of I'm mad at the people, but I get afraid that people will then grab onto that and becomes the new story. It's like, okay, so this was the original story. We dissolved the emotion, we put that down, and now I realize I do this because my dad did this. Like, no, put that fucking thing down too. It's like, if you've grabbed onto something else, you haven't done the somatic work. Okay. You've just shifted focus.
So somebody does the work and then they keep on talking about the transformation. That's a problem.
It's not even, they might not even talk about the transformation. They might, because, okay, so here's the danger. It looks the same on the outside, right? Right. You might be able to go, what's coming up for me right now is, so I remember this conversation, this relationship time. I was away on holidays with a partner, and previous in the past, I had been cheated on. The person had been married when he met me. He lied to me about it. And my intuition knew something was up, but because he got, like, I was in this beautiful, vulnerable place and I was learning to open my heart. So when I started to get afraid, he was like, oh, this is just like, this is an abandonment mood coming up. Like, you knew right where to, like, it's very smart. And, but really just the whole time I knew something was up, AKA he was married. So that was a really big, crazy journey. That relationship ended. And then when I entered into the next one, we were on holidays. There's an important detail in that last relationship. I would only get these weird spidey sense things around certain women. And I would then ask, my partner, something feels off. And he'd be like, oh, you're just insecure. This is your abandonment thing coming up again. Fast forward, every single one of those women who I had a weird thing around was either someone he had cheated on me with, was cheating on me with, or cheated on his wife that he was also with, if that makes sense. So
he was busy, huh?
Man, he was real busy.
I hear these stories. I'm like, I don't have time for one. Like, what's going on?
How you do that?
Yeah, what's going on? Jeez.
I know. That's terrible. So fast forward, I was on this holiday with my partner and I ran into someone and she'd recognized me off social media. She's like, oh my gosh, like, good to meet you. And I was like, really honored. And then she's like, oh, and then she's my partner. And in my head, this thing came in and it went like, she slept with him. And I went, oh my God, no, crazy conditioning coming up, crazy conditioning. That's silly. Anyways, later on, we're trotting around with my partner and he's like, oh, I've got something to tell you. There's someone also on holiday at the same time that I've had a pass with. And I was like, my intuition is so good. And, but it was beautiful because he like framed it and would just let me know that there was a history there.
Mm.
So anyway, in that moment, I just say, and my nervous system, literally, Mike, I was like, I thought I was going to vomit because it rushed back like this deep fear of that last one. So here's how, and now I'm coming full circle here to saying what looks the same on the app. So in that moment, I knew that what my brain was telling me, which was run, he's cheating on me, alert, he's manipulating me again, he's setting me up again. I've seen this. I was like, right now, I know this is not happening. I was like, but I am in deep fear. I want to run. I'm afraid. I don't believe anything that you're saying to me. My whole body is telling me to go, and I'm really, really scared. And I was like, it feels like, because this has happened before. And so I was explaining, this has happened before. So I'm feeling like this right now. I'm really triggered. I want to leave. I want to break up with you now. And he just sat there. He's like, what do you need? I was like, don't touch me. I was like, just don't touch me. And he just sat there for like a couple of minutes. And then I'm like, okay. That holiday, I was re-triggered like maybe 3 times, and then I got some support with it, like about that same thing. Cause it was like, anyways, so I was saying, this has happened. So this is what's coming up for me. Now, what often happens in the personal development world is that will be when someone realizes like, oh, I do this because I learned this when I was younger. It becomes an excuse for their present life of a way in which they're acting. It looks the same on the outside. They might be able to communicate to their partner or their boss or their friend. And it's actually now just an identity that they've grabbed onto instead of it being like an ownership of what's arising in the moment. Do you understand? And I don't like that I just framed me to look like the good person in that situation, because I've definitely projected before. It was just a very relevant example. So
No, I think this is a really good thing to point out. I've been in personal development for a while, and there are varying degrees, and I really appreciate all of the work because it got me to the point I am, and I believe that people need to take a path that maybe they may need to go do that thing first before they come do something else.
100%.
I did. So, yeah, much more of a cognitive approach in the beginning for me. And I have friends that never left that. I actually don't spend as much time with them anymore. And what happens is they get attached to a single method or a group or something. And it is, they have, I have some people that like, it happens a lot with people who do like the NLP age regression work. It's like, yeah, when I was 8, so now I'm like this. I'm like, yeah, but that's not transformation. Transformation means your life changed. We can check in with you 6 months later, a year later, 3 years later, and there was a permanent change. Mm-hmm. Not that you had awareness. Like, awareness is just the first stage. There's like all these other steps. Mm-hmm. So I think it's good for people to hear, because I have a lot of people, they go, I do personal development. I go, oh, cool. Like what programs have you done or whatever? It's like, well, there's these podcasts and these books I've read, and I'm going, oh,
it's cognition.
Yeah. Like you just read a book. Okay, cool. That's good. There's nothing wrong with it. And know that that's like less than 1% of what's possible for you in your transformation. So it's a very, very small amount.
It's a stepping stone as well.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's like that part where you're figuring out, whoa, I'm doing, like, sometimes it's like, it's amazing. Whoa, I've realized maybe being an asshole or me contracting around this or my judgment of that or my resistance to this is because of this. That's amazing. You have that awareness.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then there's a process to melting that away, so you don't even have to talk about it, and it doesn't become another identity that you then identify with, or an excuse to keep being a dick or keep holding yourself back.
Yeah,
move through that then.
I felt bad sometimes. People go, well, what's the thing that you worked through that caused you to be able to do this? I'm like, I don't even remember. Like that's how far gone it went. Like it's gone. Yeah. And sometimes it's cool to be able to recall because it connects with people. Like,
100%.
oh yeah, I learned to work hard from my dad because of this, or I learned this about money because of that, or whatever. It's people connect to it. So there are certain stories I like to hang on to so I can reference, but
Well,
it's
we
not
connect to humans
who I
through story,
am. Yeah.
and we connect through story. And the other thing is the beauty of the mind, Mike. This is what I believe. I was talking to my room about it last night. Um, it's that everything in here on made up. It's like it's all just made up, and we get to choose whatever. Is this okay that I'm going here?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
trust me.
I just saw an eye flicker. And I was like, okay, just checking. Okay.
No. It's the end of my day. It's the end of my day. No, I love this
Oh, it
stuff. I
is.
love
Sorry.
this stuff.
Yeah.
It's great. Oh, there's some things
Oh,
we'll
no, you
talk
go
later.
forever.
We'll talk later. Like, no, I want to hear what you're going to say though. Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
go into
yeah. I
like
get it.
deep truth stuff.
I know. I'm always like, do people know what they're getting? Like me, anyways.
Go
Um,
for it. Go for it. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying myself.
oh, good. That's all that matters in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all just made up, and because he was asking me last night, we did this meditation and we did some rapé, and we did this like beautiful little ceremony thing, and he's just like, oh, like I feel so much. And he's a Chiron, and he's like, we've been taught to like switch off our emotions and not being emotionally connected. And I was like, yes. And there's a difference between emotional connection, just having your heart open and being present with the energy. And he's just like, holy shit. He's like, okay, I get, he's he's so smart and he gets it straight away. It's beautiful. And then he was talking about like, because I write these, you can probably see on my kitchen, I write these little
Oh yeah.
affirmations for our walls because we've got glass.
That's awesome.
And only last night, he's like, I get it. He's like, you're not doing this because you want to like feel positive. He's like, you're redirecting and rewiring your body and your nervous system to see that reality so that you can create it, because we get to choose everything anyway. And I'm like, yeah, that's right.
You're like,
He's just
finally.
like, but it's a really simple concept that's often so misunderstood. It's like we create our own reality. Yeah, and we don't. Because only if you really know the depths of all of your unconscious, we are, and we're co-creating with the universe, and that's much more intelligent than ourselves, and we're also the universe, and then we're not, and there's all these different like aspects to it. And if we have a brain and we've been given a mind and we direct that attention, and that brings us closer to what's true, and we can move from a space of like purity and truth and contribution and creativity and use our logical mind to be able to direct that to contribute to the greater good, then let's do it. Let's make up a version of the world or a story or choose a reality that is deeply fulfilling and in alignment, as long as you've grounded it from the present moment. So
This is a beautiful place to let people go on about their day.
okay.
We'll leave it on a high note. That was so good. Yeah, where do people find out more about you?
Probably easy just to go to amberhawken.com, which is AMBERHAWKEN.com. Amber Hawken Instagram, Amber Hawken Facebook. It's the easiest, I think.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hang tight. I'm just gonna stop recording. There are people on Facebook